Good afternoon and good morning to some of you. I am thrilled to join you. It is Friday, August 17th, and we're here for Signum Academy's Time Camp because we're discussing A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle. All right, I'm going to get myself set up by starting my slides. Here they go. They're loading. Fantastic. My friends, Sharon Hoff is my good buddy in Arizona. She's taking your questions, organizing your comments. My name is Sparrow Alden, your fellow reader and discussionista. And this time we are discussing Chapter 12, The Foolish and the Weak. Sharon, I think I have my chat box all ready to go. So here we are. We've been talking a lot about the scientific method of thinking. It's a way of knowing that anyone can do. First, we observe. From those observations, we make inferences and we wonder. We wonder why, we wonder how, we wonder what will happen next. We wonder how it got there. Sometimes we wonder, what happens if I poke at it? That's called an experiment. After you poke at it, you observe your results. And I want to distinguish for you between two different kinds of experiment. First, there's a field experiment. Field experiments are very informal. Field experiments are not intrusive on the materials or beings who are being experimented on. It's when the observer, the scientist, goes out in the field, any field, could be a meadow, could be a forest, could be downtown Norwich, Vermont. You go out in the field and you do a thing like juggle on the street corner and see what happens. Does traffic change? Do people laugh and smile more, right? The best field experimenters in the world are toddlers. The next time you're hanging out with a 2 or 3-year-old, watch them. They are constantly poking at the world to see what happens. What happens if I put this block on top? What happens if I pour salt on the dog? What happens if I pour salt on my sister? Right? Those are experiments because that is a natural way for our brain to get information, process it, and learn. Blaine is having a birthday and you can't see my slides. Sorry, I know what I didn't do though. Thank you very much for noticing that. Oh, I've been thrown out of my slides, which is how does this keep happening? All right, let's go back to the slides. You may glimpse briefly at the knitting website. Wasn't that lovely? And pop out my chat box again. All right, can folks see my slides now? Do send a message to me through Sharon. Thank you. There we go. Field experiment, I go out there and I poke. A controlled experiment is when I make a set of observations of something pretty known and stable, and then I make a set of observations with only one thing changed. It's controlled because I kept everything as close to the same as possible. If I mix these two ingredients at noon, I want to do, if possible, the experiment the next day at noon, and I want to use the same spoon, and I want the weather to be the same. That's a controlled experiment. Now, I did a bit of a field experiment this last 2 weeks. I thought it might be a cool idea to see how characters interact by making a character braid out of embroidery floss. Here's where we are. I had 1, 2, 3 of the pins fell out and there are a lot of knots. And so I would call this a failed experiment. But that's not a failure. From every experiment, no matter what happens, you'll learn. So next time I want to try such a thing, I might tape down the pins I might spread out the origins of the yarn and think in a circular way, or I might use a piece of software that draws this stuff for me, but I really like pretty colors. So that's why I did it this way. But how fun to try something. I wanted to do science with you guys. Did anyone find peacefulness in the last chapter? No spoilers. Just tell Sharon yes, or tell Sharon you did. I'll give her a moment. Meanwhile, I'm going to say happy birthday to Blaine in Utah. Isn't it wonderful to be August birthday people? It's kind of fun, and there's never regular school, which is great. Okay, so a bunch of folks have said, yes, they spotted the instance of peacefulness. Alrighty. I'm diving into the chapter now. When the Mrs. W's first appeared, did anyone notice how they were greeted by the large gray fuzzy tentacle beings? And don't, not just yes or no, can you tell me a word or two about how they were greeted? I found it really interesting. The gray beings stood up when the presence of the three W's entered the room. The beasts bowed, and that seemed, it felt in the way it was written to be a gesture of reverence. Thank you, Ms. Gregory. Oh. Bella conceived of the beings of Ixchel as purple land octopus things. Ooh, a very soft shade of purple. I like that. Land octopus. Band name, as we would say at my house. Father left him, Meg cried. She's talking to the three Mrs. W's. He left him on Camazotz. And appallingly, Mrs. Whatsit's voice was cold. And what do you expect us to do? Meg pressed her knuckles against her tooth so that her braces cut her skin. Then she flung out her arms pleadingly. But it's Charles Wallace. It hasn't, Mrs. Watson. Save him, please, save him. You know that we can do nothing on Camazotz, Mrs. Whatsit said, her voice still cold. You mean you let Charles be caught by it forever? Meg's voice rose shrilly. Did I say that? Meg, this is not our way, Mrs. Whatsit said sadly. I thought you would know that this is not our way. What is their way? Someone address that. And what's going on with Meg? I think it's a reflection of some of what was happening yesterday. Sorry, chewing on my finger. What is their way? Meg sounds still panicky. Yeah, Meg sounds still panicky. She's kind of whining. She's not thinking things through. She doesn't have peacefulness. The Mrs. W's are limited in some way. Thank you, Sharon. They can't go to Camazotz. They can't act directly. Oh, good observation, Miss Gregory's group. Meg hurting her hand like that is a way for her to get control over a hard situation. Remember, Meg has big feelings, and probably her feeling sense is part of how she controls her feelings and works with them. It's also a sign her emotions are still running very high. The Mrs. W's can't work directly. They inspire other people to work and help them, like by tessering for them. And Meg still has really big, scary emotions, poor kid. Mrs. Whatsit spoke gently to Father. I'm sorry, we cannot allow you to go. Then let me, Calvin suggested. I almost got him away before. Mrs. Whatsit shook her head. No, Calvin. Charles has gone even deeper into it. You will not be permitted to throw yourself in with him. For that, you must realize, is what would happen. So Father is willing to go. For some reason, he's not allowed. I think that has to do with his tiny, tiny, inexperienced amount of experience with tessering, and that he has just fought a 2-year battle to resist it. I think it's mostly the tessering. And Calvin is willing to go. Let me. I almost got him before, because remember, Calvin's the one with communication. He can connect with people, even alien beings. But Charles has now gone too far for communication, and Calvin, in his relating to peopleness and his communicatingness, would go into it to be with Charles Wallace because he's such a good guy. I have an observation from one of the team that maybe if the 3 Mrs. W's are celestial star spirits, that in their blazing battle of good against the dark, they've already expended themselves. That's why they can't act directly. They are just spirits and memories and sort of free-floating kindness. We know their bodies aren't really their bodies. They're sort of free-floating kindness, so they can't directly act and go to Camazotz. I like that. They did their big battle. Now they can just guide others. Okay, so what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen. We've all read it. This next scene is a really big deal. I'm going to look at a comment from Ms. Gregory's group. Bentley connected this. Oh, well done, Bentley. If you have seen the new Avengers movie, Captain America, Team Cap Forever, Captain America says, we don't trade lives. If it's a desperate situation, the Mrs. W's won't send someone who won't succeed. Hopeless missions are not okay. They're not going to do it. So apparently they have hope. Where is the hope? Ready? I want to go through this next scene very slowly and deliberately. Please send me your observations. There was a long silence. All the soft rays filtering into the great hall seemed to concentrate on Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Who, and the faint light that must be Mrs. Which. No one spoke. One of the beasts moved a tendril slowly back and forth across the stone tabletop. It's quiet. We're in the room with the stone table. Good. There's soft light. There's nothing harsh here. No one is yelling. There are no sharp edges. At last, Meg could stand it no longer, and she cried out despairingly, "Then what are you going to do? Are you just going to throw Charles away?" Mrs. Which's voice rolled formidably across the hall. "Silence, child! couple of things happening there. Meg is still panicky and yelling at people. I've got a question for you guys, and we must wait for someone to send it to Sharon. The question is, with Meg, who's stubborn and angry and contrary and independent, which might be like how some of you guys are on a normal day, what happens when you give Meg a direct order? Any direct order? Yes, Bella, she gets mad. And there's a whole host of things that happens, right? She hates being given a direct order. Does she follow the order? You know, pretty much if she's got her stubborn up, she will automatically say, no, I won't, and contradict that order. She questions, she gets mad at the commander and at the command and at the order. You got it, Jubilee. She questions that order. Yeah. It's one of the things I kind of love about Meg. Mrs. Witch said, silence, child, but Meg could not be silent. Oh, nice note, Miss Gregory's group. They decided Meg was getting a little disrespectful. I would agree. I would agree. Meg pressed closely against Aunt Beast, but Aunt Beast did not put the protecting tentacles around her. Pause for a sec. Meg's getting a little disrespectful. And Mrs. Whatsit is using a cold voice, and Aunt Beast is withdrawing her protection. Here's a conflict. Here's a conflict. I can't go, Meg cried. I can't. You know I can't. She burst into tears. She started beating at Aunt Beast like a small child having a tantrum. Her tears rained down her face and spattered Aunt Beast's fur, and Aunt Beast stood quietly against the assault. Bella points out, when Meg gets mad, be ready for screaming. Be ready for yelling. Sharon is recalling a book that we both love and a scene called the Council of Elrond. It's coming. It's coming. Ready? When in the book, beginning, middle, or end, did Meg cry a lot and get tantrumy? Yeah, near the beginning. And over time, she's been scared, she's wept a little bit, but over time, she's gotten a little bit more control over how she expresses those big feelings. Does she have those big feelings, or do those big feelings control her? They were taking her over, and then she was feeling them and using them to get bad feelings out of the way. It's been changing. But now she's back to the way she was at the beginning. Now she's having a full out temper tantrum. Ready? Just one tiny piece at a time. All right, I'll go, Meg sobbed. I know you want me to go. How did she know that? How did she know? They won't let Father go. They won't let Calvin go. The W's won't go. They say they can't. The beings who live on Ixchel say they don't go to Camazotz. So by process of elimination, she knows. So by logic, she knows she's the only other person in the room. She's got to go. She is taking her frustration out on other people because she didn't express it. Jubilee, beautifully said. I love the way you're working on this. Yeah. All right, I'll go, Meg sobbed. I know you want me to go. We want nothing from you that you do without grace, Mrs. Whatsit said, or that you do without understanding. Quick, someone tell me what grace means here in this line. Bella, I agree with you. Well, there's nobody else. Everybody else can't go or won't go. I'm the only one left. What does grace mean in this line? Is this like ballet gracefulness? Like a graceful swan? Remember, Meg is kind of a klutz. We want nothing from you that you do without grace, or that you do without understanding. It's okay to run to a dictionary. Might even have one behind me. I'm at work today, and so this is the library at work. Isn't that great? And this is also the room where we have game night on some Fridays. So I'm sure there's a dictionary somewhere because we play Scrabble. I'm waiting. I'm waiting till someone tells me what grace means. Go ahead, Sharon. You can write in. It's related to peace. Yeah. And you know what? It is a complicated concept. Of course, she doesn't know what it means, Bella says. Of course, she doesn't really have understanding of what's going on. Grace has something to do with peace, something to do with a fluid gift. Okay, here we go. Meg's tears stopped as abruptly as they had started. But I do understand. She felt tired and unexpectedly peaceful. Now, the coldness that under Aunt Beast's ministrations had left her body had also left her mind. Beautiful. I've got some great answers. There's willing generosity in something given with grace, and it's given by choice and free will. She has, oh, Jubilee. She has to be the one who extends mercy. Jubilee is reminding us that mercy goes with grace. And friends in Utah, it's something you do without pride in yourself. Grace is humble. Grace is humble. It flows freely by choice. It's apart from feelings. It's far apart from her anger and resentment and fear. And it's got something to do with mercy. Now, you know what? That's about the best definition of grace I have heard without getting like terribly religious and theological and having to bring in like long ago scholars from universities. Beautifully done. I love the way this group works together. Here we go. She looked toward her father, and her confused anger was gone. That's grace. And she felt only love and pride. That's grace. That's not pride in herself. That's pride in her father's resisting it for so long and being such a good man. That's grace. She smiled at him, asking forgiveness. That's grace. And then pressed up against Aunt Beast. This time, Aunt Beast's arm went around her. And that is grace. Notice that it's not a tentacle anymore. It's an arm. And that distance between two species has been bridged. Whew. Love does not take into account wrong that has been suffered. Those are beautiful words, my friend. I'm so glad we're on a team together. How did Father and Calvin respond? Do you remember? When finally Meg said, okay, I'll go, how did they kind of instinctively respond? They heard her willing to go. They worried about her going. They knew it was dangerous. They each offered again to go. Mrs. W said, no, seriously, you can't go. Jubilee, that's it. They suddenly were being really protective. They know how much Meg just suffered. They know how much pain she was in, especially when the coldness left her mind and they could see real Meg again. Meg who's not having tantrums like she did at the beginning of the book. Meg who is not angry and with huge emotions controlling her. Meg who has, over all these chapters, developed, changed, and grown up. And so they see her real Meg, and they want to protect her. It's still not going to work. She's got to go. Are you remembering that she's only a child? And she's backward, Calvin bellowed. I resent that, Meg said hotly, hoping that indignation would control her trembling. I'm better than you at math, and you know it. Now, Meg is mistress of her emotions, hoping indignation would control her trembling, which has mostly to do with fear and some to do with the adrenaline dump that happened with all the anger. Meg is growing up. Here it is. This is the second that it happens. Do you have the courage to go alone? Mrs. Whatsit asked her. Meg's voice was flat. No, but it doesn't matter. Isn't that an amazing adult, but not in the scary, boring person adult sense, but mature thing to say? Do you have the courage? No. And that doesn't matter. I'm still going. You know what? That is courage. When you feel like you can't, take a deep breath and you do it anyway. Notice her voice is flat. The emotions are not controlling her ever again. There was a reference to the happy medium. Can the happy medium see the future, see what's going to happen, and why can she or can she not? Jubilee notices how honest Meg was being. Instead of like, what should I say, and worrying about people think, she just is laying it right out there. This is a person I would want to sit down at the table with to solve a problem. Okay, here's what's going on. Beautifully said, Jubilee. And does anyone remember the discussion about a sonnet. So someone answer, if you live east of the Mississippi, answer what's up with the happy medium, or if you've already started on that. And if you live west of the Mississippi, tell us what's up with the sonnet metaphor, which sonnets are metaphors. So it's a metaphor about a metaphor, which makes it a meta-metaphor. Meta-metaphor 4? Meta 8? I should stop soon. Meg is suddenly being honest with herself, says Sharon. She's not trying to fix stuff by having her father show up and fix it. She is facing a scary thing. She knows she's the only person for the job. She understands that she's the one close to Charles Wallace. The discussion about the sonnet is that it's a very strict form. There's a certain number of lines, certain kinds of rhymes, certain kinds of syllables, and whether they're loud or they're soft or any of that. It's very clearly prescribed. Like life, right? I, as a human being, can only be the person created with these genes. I can't also grow a tail, although that might be very convenient if it were prehensile, like when my back itches, I could just like tail scratch it. Can't do it. I've got to stay in the definition of me, but within that structure. William Shakespeare here said all kinds of things. He wrote a lot of sonnets. In this sonnet, maybe you'll read it sometime later with a librarian, because librarians rock. He said, all you other guys who write sonnets, they're ridiculous. So he wrote a sonnet about how ridiculous sonnets can be. And on top of that, how pretty his girlfriend is. All in 14 lines. Okay. You are given the form, but you have to write the sonnet yourself. What you say is completely up to you. That's one of the things, when I first read it, that stuck with me right through. And if that touches you too, and if that might help you be brave, and I think you can jot it down. You have to write the sonnet yourself of your life. What your life means is entirely up to you. Jubilee says, she points out, the happy medium cannot see everyone's lives and what will happen to them. But she also asked where they would be so she could watch, like at the right time. She never mentioned seeing into the future. No, she can see clearly in now. I wonder if the happy medium can see historical record, can see in the past. I don't know. But she can see now, anywhere, clearly. Awesome. All right. Thank you very much, Julie. How does Meg say goodbye to the beasts? She thanks them graciously. To Aunt Beast, she hugs her. To Calvin, yes, I'm sorry, there's a kiss, but it's a pretty nice kiss, and then it's done. And Meg is really happy about that. So there is contact between really close people who really trust each other. All right. Ready? We can do this. At last, she turned to her father. I'm sorry, Father. He took both her hands in his, bent down to her with his short-sighted eyes. Sorry for what, Megatron? And tears almost came to her eyes at the gentle use of the old nickname. I wanted you to do it all for me. I wanted everything to be easy and simple. So I tried to pretend that it was all your fault because I was scared and I didn't want to have to do anything myself. Did she burst into tears? No, they almost came to her eyes. If you're only tracking tear control, this is a huge moment. So she's describing her less mature, earlier behavior. I tried to pretend. Look at the honesty there. Jubilee, do you love this? I tried to pretend it was all your fault. You know, placing blame on someone else is a less mature characteristic. And she's saying, because I was scared and I didn't want to have to do anything myself. And then Mr. Murray, Dr. Murray, again says, no, I can't let her do that. And Mrs. Watson says a wonderful thing. You are going to allow Meg the privilege of accepting this danger. You're a wise man, Mr. Murray. You are going to let her go. I noticed they call him Mr. Murray. Maybe these were in the days when only medical doctors got called doctor, and scientist doctors didn't get called doctor. You are going to allow Meg the privilege of accepting this danger. Hold on to that one too, okay? Because accepting a hard thing, a hard challenge, isn't a burden. If you are accepting it, it's a privilege. There's a hard thing to do. I am privileged to be a warrior for the light. Here I go crying. I'm not as mature as Meg. Fortunately, I have Kleenex. Hold on. Okay. Okay, here we go. Here's a line by that wonderful writer Sharon and I were thinking about earlier. Children are meant to grow up and not to become Peter Pans, not to lose innocence and wonder, remember the importance of wonder, but to proceed on the appointed journey, that journey upon which we must travel hopefully if we are to arrive. But it is one of the lessons of fairy stories that on callow, lumpish, selfish youth, peril, sorrow, and the shadow of death can bestow dignity and even sometimes wisdom. That writer was named Tolkien, and I think Mrs. L'Engle would say, peril, sorrow, and the shadow of death can bestow grace. Jubilee has made a really succinct point that Meg turned her father into her idol and thought he could make everything right. He could do anything. Forgot that her father was an imperfect, normal guy who needed glasses and made mistakes like tessering to Camazotz instead of Mars. Yeah. He had been gone so long, she was able to make a pretend picture in her mind of a perfect, idly hero person. Yes. And now she's realizing that she's letting go of the fantasy and picking up real father who really loves her and whom she really loves. What gifts do the Mrs. W's give Meg? The most important one is, what does Mrs. Whatsit give Meg? Show me that you remember this. Mrs. Whatsit says, I give you my love, Meg. Never forget that. My love always. Thank you, Jubilee. And thank you, everyone else who knew it. Mrs. Who gives her a quote about how sometimes the little tiny people are the ones who can make a big difference. Like hobbits. Were you here for Hobbit Camp? I give you my love, Meg. Never forget that. Okay. Mrs. Witch says, I cannot hold your hand, child. If you've been tracking hand holding, there it is. Meg is standing alone. Deep breath. Okay, everyone breathe. Meg is standing alone. She goes to Kennesaws. She finds Charles Wallace, and he starts using words. He's deep in the mind of it. It isn't listening to her, but he's using words to combat her and to weaken her, and says automatically, Mrs. Watson hates you, Charles Wallace said. What happens to a defiant, obstinate, stubborn girl when you give her a hard fact she disagrees with? She's going to come back with all her faults. Yes, yes, Bella, you've got it. She knows what Mrs. Whatsit said. I give you my love, Meg, never forget. Charles Wallace says Mrs. Whatsit hates you. What's the automatic thing to say? That was where it made its fatal mistake. Because Meg said automatically, Mrs. Whatsit loves me. That's what she told me, that she loves me. And suddenly she knew love. That's what she had, that it did not have. She had Mrs. Whatsit's love, and her father's and her mother's and the real Charles Wallace's love, and the twins and Aunt Beast's, and she had her love for them. If she could get love to it, perhaps it would shrivel up and die, for she was sure that it could not withstand love, but she, in all her weakness and foolishness and baseness and nothingness, was incapable of loving it. Perhaps it was not too much to ask of her, but she could not do it. But she could love Charles Wallace. She could stand there and she could love Charles Wallace. Did you notice, and I hope it's not a typo in my text, I checked it, in that first sentence, if she could give love to it, big capital letters, perhaps it would shrivel up and die, small letters. Word, shriveled, visually. When you have time, would you check your editions and see if that is throughout every edition of the text? Well, what happens? That's it. She loves Charles Wallace. It is completely unable to resist such a thing, and her love goes wherever Charles Wallace is. He could be in the deepest, darkest recesses of this horrible it brain. His spirit could be on the other side of the universe. That's her Charles Wallace, and she'll always know how to find him, because he always knows how to find her. Jubilee reminds us, love conquers all. How many of you were here for Harry Potter camp? Love conquers all. Bella asked a very good question. In the list of beings whom she loves, she includes Aunt Beast because she just Even though she just met her, she feels that odd beast love. Why didn't she think about Calvin? Is it because her love for him is sort of romantic? Really good question, because in our culture, there can be a discomfort in knowing someone, even though they just met, they have been through a lot together, they trust each other, obviously they love each other, they want the good for one another, and if you're people of roughly the same age who might sort of vaguely, even possibly have a kind of romantic attachment, it can make the word love not occur to you or feel, huh? Feel strange. Bella, that's a really good explanation. Um, I don't know what was in Mrs. L'Engle's mind, but I like that I see the effect it had on you. Is it because her love for Calvin is not just we are fellow warriors for the light, but there's something new and different in it for her? That's a good interpretation. Hold on to it. Her heart, her love goes out to Charles Wallace. They find each other. And all of a sudden, Charles Wallace is in her arms, crying, Meg, Meg, Meg. And there's whoosh and blackness and spin and tesseract and sound effects. Still holding Charles, she struggled to stand up and look around. Father, Cal, where are we? Charles Wallace, holding her hand tightly, was looking around too. And suddenly he laughed, his own sweet, contagious laugh. In the twins' vegetable garden, we landed in the broccoli. Did your emotions just go? And Bella asks, perhaps the most appropriate question moment, why broccoli? Because broccoli, I don't know why, but here's the effect it has on me. Broccoli is pretty ordinary thing. Broccoli holds ranch dressing really nicely, does not sway the economy of the world. Broccoli, it looks like little trees. I started liking broccoli because it looks like you're eating a little tree. Broccoli, it's a happy medium. It's a little ordinary. And now they are literally grounded. And the earth is holding them again. What a ride. Some of you have not seen the movie yet. Some of you are about to see the movie. So I promise no spoilers. I'm certain that you have seen a publicity poster, however, or the outside of the box. Look at this. There's something that Ms. Gregory and Sharon and I all would have noticed. I think Jenny M., I think you're a grown-up. You probably noticed it too. And maybe the kids don't notice it at all. Look at this publicity poster. What do you see? That is amazing and fabulous and wonderful. Bella says, you're a giant, more just medium than happy medium. I think that's like, I'm a giant if I'm eating this whole tree. I assume that's what you mean, Bella. What do you see in this poster? What do you observe? You've got actors' names? Yeah. You've got the title? Fine. I'm looking at the characters. The three characters across the bottom are Mrs. Whatsit, that's the redhead, Mrs. Which, that's the blonde, Mrs. Who has the dark hair, Meg is the one with glasses. Calvin and Charles Wallace are sort of upside down and diagonal. Calvin's the younger one. Sorry. Calvin's the older one. Charles Wallace is the younger one with the dark hair. They're cut up into eensy-weensy pieces like they've been shaken up by traveling through a tesseract. The father's in the center because we know Meg put her father in the center of her life. And even though he's not in much of the book really alive, he's the center of the adventure. All these other people, beings, stars, whatever, are going on this adventure because father is at the heart of it. Good. All right, guys. I am really happy about this. In my head, in 1973 or 4, when I first read this book, I pictured that Meg was like me. And I pictured that every other character in this book was like me. The producers and director of this film made sure that there is someone with a skin tone like every single person. Everyone can see someone like themselves in this story. Everyone is invited, I'm gonna cry again, to be a warrior of the light. And that's from the change from my mind movie from 1973. That is one of the best changes that the movie makes. Bella, I love that. Meg does look like Bella. How fantastic. All right. When you see a movie, I just want to review for you some differences between seeing a movie and reading a book. Books come in through black and white letters on a page. And if I went to the movie theater and there were black and white letters on the screen, it'd be like reading my Kindle, and I should have stayed home in my pajamas. Movies are obliged to use more sensations than that. So there are going to be colors, there are going to be visual images, there are going to be sounds and things going, right? Books can make a mind movie in each reader's imagination that is the best interpretation for that person at that moment. Movies present only one image to every single person in the audience. So there's a difference. Books can take a long, luxurious time to read. Movies have to squish into about 2 hours. That's why some scenes from the book might be cut. Books can tell you what's going on inside a character's head and heart. You know, Meg's coldness disappeared. Movies can't tell you that unless there's a narrator somewhere. They can only show you a character's actions, including their words. Do they suddenly do something brave? Do they relax? Do they say something like, I understand? Movies can only do that, so they're limited. In the case of A Wrinkle in Time, the book and the movies were made in different times in our country's history. The themes of conformity and facing evil and even growing up are still important now. That's what, 40, 50, 60 years later, almost 55 years later. But they feel different. They're the same important themes. They're going to be carried out with different images. Usually, Bella, I agree. Usually the movies of some favorite books can be disappointing, especially if you've got your own really good mind movie. They can disappoint. So, when you watch it, you're going to say, how does this movie affect me? How does it affect the story? I'd like to tell you there is a change that I think is good. In addition, we've got all these beautiful different kinds of skin in there. And Mrs. Who quotes a lot, she has more and different quotes that are more modern, quotations that happened in those last 55 years. I like that. It kind of brings her lingo into the understanding of more people in the audience. Changes in movies aren't bad. They remind us that the movie is only an homage to the book, the writers and directors' fan fiction of the book that they originally loved. And it's okay to say, like Bella does, they really missed the mark on making that choice, or I'm disappointed in what happened. Sharon says she used to get a little angry when movies were not right. And now she remembers that even if the movie makes a choice that looks wrong to her, it doesn't change the book. The book is unchanged and precious. Hop down to your library, people. And remember, the most important version is your own mind movie, okay? All right. Sharon, would you like to turn on your webcam and join me? I want to wrap up because we have, I think, treated each other really well. That has felt good to me.
It's been wonderful. I enjoyed the one day I got to substitute for Sparrow and join you in the conversation, even with the technical issues. And this is the final summer camp of our whole 4-camp series this whole summer. I've been to every single meeting. I've been in the background. I've substituted in the other series, and I had a marvelous time. It was an enormous privilege to be able to do this and to connect with our campers and share the love of exploring literature, good books together in a fun way. No tests, no rules, no, other than being kind and polite, just enjoying it. And I hope you continue to do that. I hope that you've learned some good skills that you can take with you for the rest of your life and enjoy reading books and really look further, look beyond just what you read and really think about it. And I really hope you can do that. I love to do it, and I hope you will too.
Absolutely. And Sharon, thank you for working with me on this project. It has been such a pleasure working with you. All right, folks, thank you for joining us. We believe in your light. And I'm going to close with a greeting I learned from some of our Hindu friends and neighbors that means the divine light inside me salutes the divine light inside you. Namaste.